too that anyone who used babysitting has to pick their kids up by 9:30. Any kid who's in babysitting at the gym.
Yeah, all right. Here's the town attorney.
Right.
Riley, thank you. How are you doing? Good. Well, it's just something.
We'll work it out.
Folks, can I have your attention, please? People quiet down. We are about ready to open up the two back exit doors. The police are setting up cones so that you will still be in the meeting if you stay on the sidewalk right outside those doors. We have, okay, all right. We're getting ready to open those doors, and there'll be we'll double the standing area by moving people outside, and by insisting that people use their microphones tonight. I am told by our technicians that you will be able to hear, but I want to hear from you if you can't hear. That's the best we can do. There are about another 150 or so people waiting behind you, so we want to get the doors open so there'll be room for them to come in. And those of you who feel it's too chilly to be outside, I understand you can stay inside. There are only a scattering of seats out here. Unless you brought them with you, you're expected to use the ones we have. Those of you who are sitting up here by the stage, I'm going to ask that you line up by where the chairs are so that I can see you. And that way, if you want to do something like talk at the meeting, you'll be able to get called on. Please do not sit in the aisles, though, or block the doors from the exit all the way up to the front. Nick Fiorella will tell you where to move. He's standing in one of those aisles. The camera already blocks the middle aisle, but then here on this aisle, when the doors open behind you, as they're starting to open up now, we've got to leave an aisle open so that people can get out of here in less time than it took to get in. Now, the fire marshal is here tonight, as he is at all our town meetings, and told us that we have not exceeded the capacity. But capacity is only one of the things here. We have to stay in a way in the room so that their areas are clear so people can move around. That means do not block the doors on the outside there that we're talking about opening up. Do not block the doorways where people are coming in to register. Try to move in and take a space, but let's leave these aisles clear and let a row of people sit down here in the front. Nobody seems to ever want to sit down front, but tonight's the night. Kudos to those of you who brought your own chairs. Chief, you want?
So if you open up the doors, you have to open the doors now because you're beyond capacity.
Yeah, well, that's why.
Okay,
No, I was just there.
So.
I said, get the doors open. So. Those of you that are in the back of the room, you can see if the police are starting to set up the cones. You can go out there and wait for them. If you've checked in, stay by the building. Stay on the sidewalk. Huh? Okay, but you can stand outside. Oh, please open the doors and stand by the thing. We will see that you know that you have checked in. If you stay on the sidewalk by the building, you will be checked in. You will be at the meeting. You leave that sidewalk on the lawn, go out to the parking lot. You got to come back in again like anyone else that hasn't been here. All right. The advantage I have standing up here is I can see the line of people outside. And I want to get people to move out so that we can clear the area around the clerk's office and get the other people checked in. This is kind of a big clog that we have developed here. So please, please, please. Being outside does not mean that you will not get to speak or hear. You will get. I am having people with mics stand by the exit doors, so if people outside want to speak, If people outside want to speak, you come up to the exit door and there'll be a mic there and you'll get recognized to speak. But I must ask at least 50 to 70 people to step outside so we have room to continue to circulate in the new people. All right. The second thing I want to tell you is that we are going to try a few things at this meeting to speed up the progress of what we're doing tonight. I know that a lot of you are new to town meeting that I see here tonight because I don't remember seeing you at too many meetings before. So the way that things work here is we go article by article as they put on the warrant. But I'm going to ask, as we're allowed to decide as a town meeting, that we take up some of these articles out of order. The articles that I think that have drawn the most of the new people out here tonight, the people who are not here for the regular budget, but are here for some of the special items that are on the warrant. So I'm going to raise that when we open up the meeting. There's a question about a school building I hear. Anyone else hear of that? All right, well, it's in there, as they say. And there's a question about changing the zoning bylaws to allow for retailing of marijuana. We're going to get to that tonight, right after the school. There's a question out there. I've seen some signs about doing the zoning at 6 High Street. I've talked to the lawyer for the property there, and that is not going to go forward. At least he's going to ask that it be tabled, so that that should save a little bit of time. We'll get to that tonight so that we make sure that people who came for that don't have to come back to hear it some other night. We'll take care of that tonight. And then some of the routine articles, things I have never heard of anybody discuss. We're going to try to combine those some more so that we can move through some of the ritual of reading things to you. Hold on, yes, ma'am. What? I don't think the problem is the mic, but I'm going to put it up closer. Does this help? Can you hear that? All right. I don't think it's going to help doing this. All right. Lucky I don't have to share this mic, I'll tell you that. All right. So, as I said, you know, we go through things generally in order. When we get the meeting started, I never allow the meeting to start while the people are waiting in line to get in, but we also, as I say, have to get some people to go out. The fire marshal whispered in my ear that until people start to stand on the outside, we cannot complete checking people in and we cannot start the meeting. I got all night, but some of you are standing, and I've only been standing a few minutes, and I don't want to do it all night. So please, 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 heed my words. Take a space on the sidewalk there. Let there be room for other people to move in here. You know, I used to go down to North Station on the train, and when you come out at night, everybody wants to get home. And it was almost as crowded as this is. But the only way that people got to their trains was by spreading out and following the direction of the train crew. So, as town moderator, I'm going to play the role of the train crew tonight and ask you, please, if you're near the doors, please take advantage of our outdoor seating on this fabulous spring evening. And the sooner we can do this, the sooner we can get these big articles out of the way. And believe it or not, there might be some seats that open up at that time. All right. We're very, very pleased to see so many people turn out. I got to say that. This is not a problem that I have a problem with. This is a problem that I've been looking forward to. Seeing this many people interested in what's happening in town and being here to participate in the biggest decisions you're going to have to make all year. That's really what town meeting is about. As you can see, there is a presentation that the school is going to put up from their building committee. That's how we're going to start the program. and then there'll be a chance to ask questions about that. I'd like to, though, be able to get the school question presented and heard and voted on by 8:30, I would hope, depending on how quickly we can move ourselves around and get people in here. So, the good news is, in an hour we can be beginning to start going home, those of you who only came for the school. Although you're absolutely welcome to stay for everything on the town meeting agenda, and even the things we don't do tonight. Town meeting will resume in 2 weeks to finish up the business that we can't reach tonight. We didn't really build in a lot of waiting around time, and that's really what we're going through right now. But those of you who were here 25 years ago know we used to have to wait for people to come, as opposed to have people wait for people to find a place to stand. So, I see very little effort, and we can clear this room up and get the rest of the people in. Believe me, we're not going to start any debates or discussions on anything with people outside not hearing. So I need people outside to know whether or not we can be heard when we're on the microphones. Those are the doors. You can't hear outside? Okay, we can't start with people waiting to get in. That's what we do here in town. And, you know, it's a little bit on them for coming late and a little bit on you for standing in their way. All right. Carol go out and listen, see if she figure it out, we can make it work. Carol? Have her take a mic with her. I want to be able to talk to her. Right? Huh?
Do you have checkers out there? I haven't done anything about checkers out there. No, I meant outside.
I haven't done anything for outside yet, but I don't think we're not going to get to that.
Okay.
The police are in Green County. I don't have anyone to count the people outside.
You haven't what?
I don't have anyone to count the voters.
That's what I'm talking about. Do you want me to go talk to David Vance and...
Yeah, if you can send two of them out there, one, you know, just have them split up, you know. All right, we're having our technical people go outside and check whether we have enough equipment here to get the outside lit up. I wish we really had a pause button sometime, you know, we could, you know, some of you can watch it, we can rerun it right on top of itself. But I will tell you what I'll go through a little bit of our regular pitch, maybe get a little more attention. This town meeting is really two town meetings in one. We have what's called the special warrant. And the special warrant is generally to take care of things that really can't wait any longer in this year to get addressed. And then there is the annual town meeting or the regular town meeting, which has more items on it, things that are more permanent things. Of course, the school building is on the special because we want to try to get that decided right now. The annual town meeting, we usually start tonight. We don't usually complete it in one night because the special town meeting can take up half the night. Waiting here can take up another chunk of time. And Merrimac has what we call a zero quorum. Believe it or not, sometimes we don't have 500 people show up. The mics might work. Huh? Yeah. No. I cannot pick and choose between voters. Though all of you here and all of you waiting to be in this room have a right to be at town meeting. And when I have a town meeting and not everybody can get in the room to be a part of town meeting, then you cannot conduct town meeting. That's the state law. So we can stand here and pretend it's a town meeting to the convenience of those of you who'd only want to come out here once every 5 years. But that's not the way we run things. I expect it. No. This is not something that is subject to a vote. I hate to tell you this. You cannot vote to take people's rights away to be in the room. They're here, present, trying to get in here. We cannot accommodate it. There is a fire. Right. Folks, we will get the equipment that is necessary to hold the meeting in here. The school, okay, let me address this for a second, because unfortunately, people don't always get things exactly right when they go talking about it. I know there were mailings that said, if you don't have town meeting vote, you can't be on the ballot for the school building. Not true. It is on the ballot. We can have the town meeting portion after the ballot is held. It is on the ballot for next Monday from 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. You can vote at the library in Merrimac. You can vote for the school issue. You can vote for the people. That can happen. That is not going to change. After that, when we resume town meeting in 2 weeks, we will have the equipment in order to handle this crowd. That's what we asked to do, right where you're sitting. All right? Look, I apologize to people who came here thinking that everything that they wanted to happen could happen without any effort. Some things take a little bit more effort, and the effort is to get a place where everybody can hear. Those of you who came early enough to get in the room, folks, will you please stop interrupting, and I will try to address all these questions. But I cannot have 6 or 8 people calling out in the middle of a meeting.
Have them fold up the chairs, and we can fit the capacity that's here right now. They all have to stand.
Well, where are we going to put the chairs?
They have to stand.
I know, but where are we going to put the chairs? All right. Huh? Yeah? All right. Folks, the 2 things. One, we are trying to adjust to the number of people that have come out here. I understand that this is important. When I say it's, people who come here once every 5 years, it's because only once every 5 years do we have a vote that's this important. That's what's going on. And if I hear more from you, I'm going to sit you down here so I don't have to turn my head to hear it. Look, just let me speak, all right? The fire chief has told me, contrary to what I expected, that if we take the chairs away from those of you who are sitting and fold them up and put them up against the stage here and you all stand, that we can proceed with people in the room. Orderly. All right. So we're going to go one section. We're starting with the kitchen section. The rest of you just please stand in place. Stand in place. Show that you can do a job that you're told to do. Thank you very much for listening. Those of you who are unable to stand, please bring a chair forward and we can sit you there. Those of you who cannot stand, keep a chair with you and we'll have a place for you to sit.
asked the fire chief, and he said we can sit crisscross applesauce on the floor for the people that want to sit. I
They
didn't.
can sit on the floor. You can't sit on a chair.
Yeah,
What he said,
yeah.
yeah.
So I didn't know if you said that. I couldn't
No,
hear.
I
with
was
all
saying
the
what I was
noise.
saying is people cannot stand. They can bring a chair.
No,
We'll
that's
deal with
fine.
that. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Hey.
Mom, there are some people that are going to have to sit.
I know. That's
So-
why I said bring a chair up front. We'll sit them up front. Hey. All right. If you need to sit, there's a line of people sitting right behind you right now. Okay. If you're unable to stand for the meeting, come forward and take a chair. And we have a little sitting section here. I got to build some lines from the doors to the front so I can get any semblance of a count. You know, you can't count a
Yeah, well, there should be a minimum of 6 foot wide.
Yeah, well, they don't stand. Yeah, but I can't. I need help laying it out with it. All right. All right, folks.
They need to leave an aisle.
That's what I'm trying to do next. Yeah. All right. We got the hard part done. Now I want you to look over your shoulder to the exit doors. And if you're standing in a direct line with the exit door and the stage, please move. We need to leave a space between you and the door. We got to create some sort of an aisle. So if you're standing in that line between people and the door, please step apart. Done very well on the kitchen side. All right. And those of you who are standing in front of where anyone else was sitting, those of you who are standing now closer to the stage. Well, I can hear you, so we'll be all right. Those of you who are standing within 20 feet of the wall here, please come a little closer. Let's try to leave a little bit of a line between you because I've got to break this room up so it can be counted. All right. Is there anybody standing outside now? And those of you who are outside, those of you outside in the hall, the entry hall, have you checked in? Yes. All right. What? All right, look. Hello, everybody. Please, 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 let's see if people can be quiet, silent for a moment, and we can see it, if we're all quiet, except for the speaker, what we can hear. Because if we can hear, we will try to do business. If we cannot hear, we cannot do business. All right? Now I'm trying to check. Are there people still out in the hallway that have not checked in? All right. Well, let's get a little rotation. Why don't you do it clockwise here? Come in one door and out the other, and get yourselves checked in. All right? Are there people who are outside? Yes. Come close to the doors because we do not have a speaker yet. We have sent somebody to get another speaker, but we're not ready to have a meeting if we have people who don't fit within the sound of my voice. Now that's the good news, is you don't have to hear from me tonight. You have to hear from you and what's going on. That's why we've tried to put up microphones, and we have microphones to be carried, so that if you can get to the aisle spaces that I'm setting up, they're not just for leaving, they're also for being near where the mics are. And if you've learned anything in the last half hour about these mics, is if you aren't holding it by your mouth, there's no chance that people here are going to hear you.
Do you mind not standing by the speaker so just in case we're talking feedback? If you want to stand like over here,
Huh? Oh.
That way you won't spill it. Thank you.
Thank you.
if you stand back in the middle, you won't be picked up with the speakers and it won't be the screen.
All right. Woo, all right. All right. How'd the check-in still?
There's still people checking in, and I want to know how you want counted. The police are asking where you want them to be counted.
What, outside? Huh? I'm gonna have to set that up. Okay. All right. Huh? All right, let me, sorry. All right, one of the questions that came up here is, why are we meeting here in Merrimac for town meeting? Because the state requires us to have our town meetings in Merrimac. They don't let any other towns come to Merrimac and hold it. We get first pick. But we need a special, literally a special act of Beacon Hill in order to get permission to even go down to the regional high school and hold the meeting there. All right? Okay. All right. Would you believe if I told you I did anticipate that? There's not much I can do about it, though, because I'm not the Beacon Hill. I can't actually say, hey, Beacon Hill, do what I want, because Merrimac wants to have a meeting someplace else. All right? We will take up this provisions to do that. Look, I'm bearing with you with what your patience is, but, you know, in order to be a legal meeting, we have to have an idea of a couple things. One, who is here and that you have a right to vote. Two, that you are not being kept out of this room because of the crowd or the lack of a microphone. If you want to make a vote, especially on things as we know are very important, you don't want people who aren't here and didn't see what was going on to say, hey, I heard this story about people went down to the suites of school and they have no idea who voted for what and what was going on and how many people did this and how many people did that. And not everybody. Okay. If we don't do things properly, sir, we're not going to start until the people have checked in. All right? I appreciate that you've been here, but when I came here tonight, you weren't here. So people have been here longer than you. We're going to take care of these things. Please bear with us all. Now, look. You can grumble, but it doesn't speed anything up. I need you to... Sir, would you take those and put them halfway? Those people on this side are one group. Those in behind them are along the wall. Just make a definition. All right. Take two cones and stick them in a row. Take two cones and stick in a row. Yes. People one in front of it and people behind it.
Before, when they exit, we have a plan. If I can address that before they leave, we're going to direct them out. They're only going to be able to go one way or the other, and roads are going to be blocked off.
All right. All right, folks, I've asked our counters to split the front of the room from the back of the room by putting cones in the aisles. There are more cones there, but the ones in the midpoint are there for the counters to know if you're in front of it or if you're behind it, so we can do the counting. So, side to side, the aisles are still there. You can see there's an aisle where the line goes down. There's an aisle at this end, so you only have to do the aisles. Those of you who are counting in the back, the person with the camera is the last person who has a seat. So it's everyone between the camera and the back wall are the people who you have to count. Now I have 3 people counting, one from the exit sign to the outside, between the 2 exit signs, and from the exit sign over to the kitchen side. All you counters understand where you have to be? All right. All right, well, it certainly sounds louder to me. All right? All right. It's amazing what you can do for free. All right. Yeah. All right. All right, folks. Just so you know who to be angry with, my name is Bob Bender. You got it? It's on the ballot. All right. I appreciate your working here. And as I say, those of us who do our best estimating, we don't get all the heavy rains right either, or the heavy snows. The over-under for tonight's meeting, I don't even want to tell you how much people lost betting that. So, I want to call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. We have some order here in the room. We just don't have chairs for everyone. As I said when I started talking before, town meeting is run through organization, and we have warrants. And we're going to call first the meeting to order on the special town meeting that's been posted for April 29th, 2019. It's special because it's not the annual, and it's really as simple as that. So with me up here to read the articles are the selectmen. We have Joel Breen, in the middle Ralph Spencer, and Carol Traynor is tracking down an amp. So, as I said, town meeting runs, as we've seen, when people are quiet enough to hear the instructions from the moderator. I try to keep people that only one person at a time is talking, and that's the person that I recognized. I said, yes, please talk. When you talk, you must go to the mic. Now, we have a couple of mics up here, and we're going to, well, We're going to have one of our counters take one back further in the aisle because we have so many people, you can't get to the mics that we used to get to. And if we don't get to the mics, you don't get heard, as you've heard. You've seen it clearly demonstrated. So if you want to be heard, you want to go to a mic, and if you go to a mic, please say something that people want to hear. That means talk about the issue, talk about something that other people haven't already said, and we can move through this. Now, the order of the meeting is set by tradition, but we can, as a group, decide to take things up out of order by a vote doing so. And I would propose that we start the special town meeting at Article number 6. Article number 6 is the Pentucket School issue. All those in favor of taking that one up first? All opposed? Well, it's a pretty solid majority. I did see 3 or 4 people who were opposed for some reason, but we're going to take out the Pentucket first. Now, the school principal, Jonathan Seymour, has set up a display. I hope to get it higher than anyone who was standing so that you could see it. But believe me, some people said they've seen this film so many times they don't need the picture. But we're going to get it anyway. Thank you, sir.
Check. Hey everyone, I just stood up here so that you might be able to see me a little bit better, but being this close to that isn't going to work so well. All right, so hello, I'm Jonathan Seymour. I'm a Merrimac resident. I happen to be the principal at the high school, and I've been chairing the school building committee for the last few years. So I just have a short presentation tonight on behalf of the school district, the school committee, the school building committee, and all of us who've been working on this project, just to give you a little bit of background, particularly for those of you who may not really be up to speed on what's going on. So let's just go ahead and get started. So the district is considering a building project, and that is what is here tonight for the town meeting and as well for the ballot vote next week. So why is it that we are here proposing this, and why is it at this particular time it seems like the time to do this? So as you probably know, the 2 buildings on the regional campus were built some time ago when the district decided to regionalize and built a 7 through 12 building, and then sometime later built another building and separated the grades out for space. So those buildings were very useful for many years. Back about nearly 20 years ago, the district proposed to the communities to build a new high school, identified that there were some facility and infrastructure issues, went before the state, got some grant funding, and brought that proposal, which was not supported by our communities. So for the last 20 years or so, the district has been actively seeking to get back into that process with the state. It's a very generous process for communities to be able to support building projects. These are very expensive projects, and the state is, again, very generous to allow this process to help with that funding. So in 2015, after numerous years of attempting to get back into that process, the district finally was back working with the MSBA, and we were really excited about that. Part of getting us back into that process, we did an existing conditions report. We hired an architect and an engineer to come in and look at both of the buildings on the regional campus, and they identified some very serious imminent issues with the infrastructure, the heating, the electrical, the HVAC. So after really taking a pretty quick look at what we had going on, they realized that these systems were well past their life expectancy. Here are just some pictures of our electrical system in the vault and in the mechanical room in the high school. As well, the heating and HVAC system is well past its life expectancy. We're experiencing frequent issues with water. We have water main breaks that sometimes flood the outside of the building, and in this case, flooded the inside of the building. We have issues with roofs that leak on a regular basis. We have a whole section of the building which is not handicap accessible. So we have, again, a whole bunch of issues here. And again, in 2014, we had this existing conditions report created. They stated that these systems were in imminent danger of failure. And so again, we were fortunate that almost at that same time, the MSBA accepted us into their process to potentially result in a grant to help us towards this building project, towards some solution, at that point, not knowing what that would be. So our experience working and living and educating in these buildings on a daily basis supports this assessment. We are experiencing consistent issues. A couple of years ago, main electrical line into the high school, underneath the school, exploded. We lost power. We were able to replace that line. Again, water main breaks are very frequent. I showed you the picture there with the mud. It flooded a significant part of the building. We've had burst heating pipes. We have this famous room. It's our mechanical room where our HVAC system and the gas mains and the electrical are all sort of in this same location. A couple of years ago, we nearly had a catastrophic event there where a steam water pipe burst. And again, if it had only been for a few more hours of time, we would have potentially had this catastrophic event which we're concerned about, where we wouldn't be able to have our heating system functioning or the electrical system. So those are things we are experiencing on a regular basis. And again, since 1999, the district has sought to get back into this MSBA process and to do that before it's too late. So again, we're fortunate that we're at that point. But is it too late? So even if all of this works out for us this week and next week, we still have potentially 3 years of working and educating in this building prior to moving into a new building. So we're really not even out of the woods yet in the sense of making this building last and do what it needs to do until potentially we could be into a new building. So why can't we simply repair some of these things? This is a question that really comes up quite a bit. So the Architectural Access Board Code of Massachusetts states that if you do a capital repair to your building that exceeds 30% of the assessed value, you then have to address the entire facility. So it's not as simple as going in and replacing the electrical panel or replacing the HVAC system, which we know will cost us well above this 3.6 threshold. We would have to address many, 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 many things across the facility. So we did a cost estimate on this. We know that that's excess of $70 million. So, again, 4 years ago, we were accepted back into this MSBA process. It's a very lengthy process. They require you to consider every possible option that you can think of. Last summer, we brought all the potential options to the community. We had a great meeting over at the high school. We had tremendous participation from folks, and overwhelmingly, the choice that people made was to build a new structure that would take care of the grades 7 through 12 and replace the middle and high school. So replace both of the buildings on the regional campus at the same time. So we presented some cost estimates at that time. We have obviously taken that particular option and developed it a little bit more, right, in terms of the design process. We've recently had 2 new independent designs or estimates done that were reconciled, so we have better information about what this project would cost. All of that goes to the MSBA. They look at it all, and then they determine, hey, this is what we can do to help you, and then the balance is something that the community would be responsible for. So we had that all taken care of in April, and here we are tonight looking at, making a decision tonight, and then following that up a week from now. So this MSBA process, it's rigorous, it's thorough. Like I said, we've been at this for 4 years, submitting paperwork, submitting reports, documenting what the issues are, and then developing potential scenarios. So not only does it take time to get into it, it takes time once you get into the process. So from the time that we were accepted to the time that we could potentially move into the new building, it's a 7-year window, right? Many of you in this room, and it was great to see you all coming in, you've participated in this process. You've come to meetings, you've given your input, you have made suggestions. We take all that in. The building committee and the school committee ultimately made those decisions, but it wasn't on our own, it was with the input of the community, and again, overwhelmingly, everybody that participated selected this particular option of building something new and building a 7 through 12 building. So, brings us to the point of, so what is it that we're talking about? What would this building potentially look like? So we have been publicizing and putting, we've been doing meetings throughout the community. You may have seen this, you may have seen some video. For the sake of time, I decided not to show the video, but just a few pictures we'll look at here tonight. So this is a street view of the building, as this is Route 113, as you know it, driving in, the current high school is kind of where this parking lot is. This would be the main entrance. There's a high degree of separation in this building. There's an area that is the middle school side, and there's an area that's the high school side. This would be the middle school entrance. This would be the high school entrance. Here are just some classrooms. This is probably an engineering classroom space. Here is a modern science classroom. This is probably a multi-purpose classroom that could be used for a variety of subjects. Obviously, gymnasiums, auditoriums, things like that are included in this project. And then there is a little bit of field reconfiguration, so the school would be built behind the current high school on what is our football and other uses as well. It's the baseball field. Once the project would be completed, we would move into that building, we would take down the high school, and then we would take down the middle school, and then we would rebuild some of the fields that we've taken for the project, for the building. So, for instance, this is all existing, the track, the tennis courts, the softball field, and where this multi-use field is where the middle school is. This is the current central office for the district. So, the project is intended to be efficient and durable. It is smaller than the combination of the current middle and high school if you were to put those two together by some 50,000 square feet. With energy efficient systems, intended to be maintained by the facility manager, our maintenance and capital planning process. As a part of all of this MSBA, we needed to submit some documents. They really liked our maintenance plan. They gave us some additional reimbursement points for that plan. So this is the kind of system that we would have in place to maintain and make sure this building lasts for a very long time. I mentioned that in the summer we came with some information. We have since, again, new estimates, new reconciliations. We were able to trim about $9 million out of the project from what we presented in the summer to what we're presenting now. And that was really due to some decisions about less expensive but really durable exterior finishes. For instance, it's a brick building, it's a brick facade, which is less expensive but very durable, and it happens to also look good. Another change too was there was a proposal at one point to build a new district office. We decided to remove that from the project. Again, millions of dollars worth of savings there, because this is really not about the district administration and HR office, it's really about students. So. Another question that comes up quite a bit is, will this be built well? Will it be constructed well so that it works properly and it lasts for a long time? And there are really a whole bunch of layers that will be in place in order to ensure that. So one of them is the owner's project manager. This wasn't always a part of the MSBA process, but they have recently added it so that the owner, being the district, has a separate project manager that looks out for our interests above all else. It's not tied to the designer, it's not tied to the construction manager. This is our owner's project manager, and they do a great job of making sure that everything is done to our advantage. Construction manager process, where we were able to be a part of selecting that. The MSBA also really wants to protect their investment. They're going to be giving $50+ million to our community. They want to make sure it's well spent. So they have these commissioning agents who are participating in the process to make sure that the way it was designed is the way it's installed, that it works properly, and that everything's done right. As well, the project team from the district side will be on site constantly to make sure that that this building is built right. Sorry, somehow that skipped ahead. Let's see here. Okay, so we have published quite a bit of information about what this building would cost our community and just some assumptions. So what these are based on is the district's share of the project, the number of students that come from each town, what the borrowing would look like. So we're estimating at this point 30 years. This is a bid process when you actually go out, so we're not sure exactly what it will be. Back in February, we thought that 2.75 was a conservative number. And then, of course, the home assessment for each of the three communities. So again, that's just sort of the average. The total cost of this building would be $146.3. The MSBA is contributing $52.7 million, leaving the district share at $93.6. So there's a complicated formula that results in how they come up with the 52.7. So they take all the cost estimates, they put it in, they deem certain things eligible, and then you get a percentage of that. they deem some other things ineligible, and you don't get a percentage of that. So after it all shakes out, we confirmed back on April 10th that 52.7 was what the state was going to be contributing. Just one example of something that might not be covered so much, site work. They cover a percentage of site work, but they don't cover all of the site work. And there's quite a bit of site work in this particular project. So you can see this is just a different way of looking at it, broken down, again, based on those assumptions. For here in Merrimac, based on if you had that average home, this could potentially be a $734 increase annually. Another question that comes up a lot, what if this doesn't pass? So if we need approval from all three of our communities, and so if this doesn't pass, this doesn't mean that those issues that I presented at the beginning go away. So we need to figure out a different way to address those. One of the options that we considered in the process was to simply do some of these repairs. Look at that 30%, and then you got to do the whole project, right? So we looked at that. We know that costs about $70 million. So if this doesn't get approved, the district would come back to the community and say, okay, that was too much. Let's ask for the $70 million to go and make that repair. At that point, we would have said no to the MSBA money, so we would be looking at doing the $70 million all by ourselves. We also know, because we did this cost estimate, that we would then address the middle school at some point later, which is $40+ million in 2018 dollars. So again, that would need to go through the same process. We would end up back here at this same point, having a meeting just like this, talking about how are we going to solve these issues. We've developed contingency plans, so in the event that one of these systems fails and we cannot use the building, the high school would squeeze itself into the middle school, and when I say squeeze, I mean that literally, squeeze ourselves into the middle school, taking places like the cafeteria and making multiple classrooms out of them, taking any space, so that we could somehow keep the high school going, and then the middle schools would be sent back to their elementary schools. So that's actually part of that regional agreement. If you looked at the warrant articles on the annual town meeting, there's a change in the regional agreement which is related to this contingency plan. So one way of looking at this is the cost at the $93.6 million. We would end up with, again, a new building, 7 through 12, on the regional campus, or potentially looking at trying to do some repairs to both of those buildings, which likely would exceed that cost. So, Mr. Moderator, that brings me to the end of what I was going to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Before we move forward, we have to make a forward motion. All right. I'd like to move the business that we have here and formally open our discussion for the floor. Joel?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve the appropriation and borrowing authorized by Pentucket Regional School District of $146,332,328 for the purpose of construction of a new middle and high school to be located at 24 Main Street, West Newbury, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, which school facility shall have an anticipated useful life as an educational facility for the instruction of school children for at least 50 years, and for which the district may be eligible for a school construction grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Thank you. Being that this was written by lawyers, there's another 2 paragraphs to go, but do I have your permission not to read that out to you? Yes. All right. Very good. My apologies to the attorneys. It's great not being the only attorney here. So, what's going on? The town is being asked to approve what the school committee of Pentucket has decided to do. And the school committee of Pentucket has decided to build with the assistance of the state. The state put in $52.7 million, and the 3 towns splitting its share the same way we split all of our assessments, $93.6 million. And to do that by borrowing, I don't think everybody wants to pay the cash today. And to do that, there's a lot of extra language here explaining that what the conditions are of getting the state money and what the conditions are of borrowing money. But the loan will be paid for by our tax dollars in what's called the debt exclusion. A debt exclusion means that as soon as we have paid off this debt, this borrowing, we will no longer be authorizing the town to collect the money to pay the debt, i.e. there is an end at this project. And it apparently, the best terms may be in 30 years, so that'll be how long it will take to pay off the debt. At the end of 30 years, the town will no longer be authorized to raise the money on top of your tax bill to pay for this bill. That's what a debt exclusion is. You pay for it, but it's not permanent. 30 years is not permanent. All right, so if it was permanent, it would be called an override, and that would permanently change your tax rate. And the money could be used for anything. This is a debt exclusion only to be used for paying for the school. All right, so what does that require? The Pentucket Regional School District has decided to do this. Each of the 3 member towns has to approve it at a town meeting. Say, we authorize spending the town money this way, giving it to Pentucket and building it the way that the state and Pentucket decided it has to be done. Another thing that's required, and these are things that are required by our Pentucket Regional School Agreement that's set up according to state law. And it says that a majority of people at town meeting and a majority of people at the town poll, the election next week, each of them have to approve this, not the same majority, but it has to happen twice. Once at town meeting and once at the poll. As I was saying before, this vote is not to put it on the ballot. This vote is necessary in and of itself to approve the town having a debt exclusion to raise the money. The vote at the poll is usually more people than show up for town meeting, but I'm not so sure anymore. The vote of the town at the town election is for the whole shebang, that the public at large, those who could come to town meeting and those who didn't come to town meeting, get to vote on this by going to the town poll. It's a fail-safe in a sense that we have to have it approved both places. That's enough about the process. You heard what the motion is. We're going to open the floor for questions. Now, there are people with mics. Would you please raise your hand if you have a microphone that you brought along? There's one in the back of the room there. There's one on the stand up here. And if you have a question, please come to a mic. If you don't, shout it out and I will repeat it. I tend to repeat a lot of things because people don't always hear what's on the floor. I didn't hear much of anything until I got my hearing aids. So it's a personal hearing device. So does anyone have something they want to ask about this project? All right, yes. Well, right behind you. Take 3, 2, 1. All right. Will you please put your mouth almost up to the kissing it.
Warren Graff,
It works.
Birch Meadow Estates.
Okay.
Is that too loud?
Okay. You just talk. We'll do the adjustments.
I've been in town here more than 30 years. My kids are grown up out of the school system for 20 years. I'd like to retire here and stay here. But one of my concerns is we know what the tax burden is going to be for this. We also saw something tonight from Bob Sinibaldi about another override next year proposed for the roads, permanent. These overrides, they're permanent. People have to keep that in mind. What I'd like to know is there were 2 big projects in the past, the renovation of the town hall and the library. Have those things been paid off?
They are very close to being paid off, although that doesn't mean that there hasn't been more money needed to keep those buildings going. There's an article on for more money on the town hall, and we've seen, those of you who drive up and down West Main Street, that there was a roof replacement on the library this year. Those are things that were not paid for in the original borrowing and the original project. But those projects are very close, within a year or 2, I think, of being paid off entirely. But you have to remember 2 things. I don't mean to disagree with you, but I want to correct you. I want to correct you about one thing. As I was explaining, there are things called overrides, which is what the highway department is talking about. An override is a permanent change to the tax rate. A borrowing, even if it's for a long time, is not permanent. We do pay things off. And if you don't expect to be here for 30 years, you aren't going to be here when it gets paid off. But it does get paid off. And it goes off the tax rate at that time. This is, you have to look also, this, I think, you know, I like to think of things as monthly costs. And I think the cost here for the average home in town, I keep close track of that because it's like my home, is like about $65 a month. Now, it's going to go up a little bit over the years because that's sort of the natural way of taxes go. But right now, we're talking about something like that. That is for borrowing from Merrimac $32 million or $33 million. $32 or $33 million is 60 times what the highway department is talking about. So if you're paying 65 for this, the highway department is talking about $1 or $2 on your tax rate a month. So, you know, just, you know, the numbers are big, but you got to listen to what they are and be sure you understand what the differences are. All right, does anyone else want to speak on this? Yes, I see you. You have your own mic.
Hi, I moved to say we vote for this. Anyone else in favor?
Yes.
All right.
Second.
I'm just going to ask once more, ma'am. I appreciate what you're saying, and I share the sentiment, but I want to ask, is there anyone else that has a question about this? Because, as I say, once town meeting is over, we're done with the questions. Yes, ma'am. Is there a mic right behind you?
I have a question regarding the size of the building. Is it based on the declining census? It is.
Okay, the question for everybody is how do you determine the need of the student population?
Sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things I said before was how sort of lengthy and rigorous this MSBA process is. One of the first things that you do is, well, that they do, is that they certify sort of a design enrollment, a targeted enrollment projection for the building. And then the size of the building is all sort of based on that number. Mm-hmm. So it's a 2,000 student school, it's a huge school, right? If it's 400 students, it's a very small school. So our target enrollment is 965 students for 7 through 12. Right now, we're at about 1,100. So the projection is that we will be continuing to get smaller. The district has lost about 26% of students over the last 10 years or so. So the district is getting smaller.
Right.
And so the building is sized for that particular group of students. And as I mentioned, if you look at the current building, you put them two together, this building is about 50,000 square feet smaller.
Okay, I was just curious.
All right, one more question, anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, can you hear me? Oh. Jan Nelson from Orchard Street. On the new building, is there any decrease in size because you have only one set of infrastructure, one set of heating, one set of everything, one set of, you know, so you're combining two buildings into one, so there's less infrastructure kind of
Yes,
stuff?
absolutely. The building is much more efficient in many, many different ways, from mechanical systems to the size of this, you know, all of the different spaces, so absolutely.
All right. There's been a motion to close off the debate. All up.
Right here.
There's a Yes, Ed?
Hi, were you able to
Please,
factor
wait.
in?
I don't know who's speaking, but
Sorry.
this is the man over here that I'm recognizing.
Oh,
I
I'm
see you have the mic, but
Hi, I'd like to understand, is this a fixed price project? And if not, what's our risk of overage? You talked about the site work and so forth.
the guy crawling up here
No, I'm just
on the
standing here.
okay, now you can see him. He's the one I recognized.
For you, though, that don't know me, my name is Ed Davis. I'm one of the assessors in town, and I have been assessing for too many years. I have been here over the years. I've seen what went on in the past with the proposed old school. And so I want to give you a few things to think about when you vote, one way or the other. I'm for the school. My kids got a good education out of it. Everybody seems to get a good education out of the school. And somehow they manage with the issues they got. But it's got to the point where, think about this. If we pay the repair bill, that's $110,000, as Jonathan said, as opposed to 93 now. Yeah, right, million. You'd like it to be 100,000. Anyway, yes, the state is giving us $52.7 million. Think about it this way. Every year, schools get accepted to this by the state for building projects. Your tax dollars, my tax dollars, go to those other cities and towns. So it would be nice to get some of that money back here into the town that benefits the town. Some other things to think about. Myself and my partner, my other assessor, we've been out looking at sales for the past year. The sales of property are just mind-boggling, what people are paying to buy homes in this town. And I know part of it's because of the school's reputation. But think about this. If you say no, and you go with a repair bill, or if you don't go with a repair bill, sooner or later that school's going to be shut down. You're going to be sending your kids out of town someplace, whether it's Newburyport, Haverhill, or wherever it is, you're going to be sending your kids out of school. And you know what's going to happen to the value of your property? You're not going to get back 2/3 of what you paid for it. So a school, and when I talk to people here in town, you know, I like to know why they're coming to town, why you're coming to Merrimac. You know, Merrimac's a little town. How did you hear about it? Well, a lot of people work in Boston, and they get here quicker to Boston quicker than they can from some of the other suburbs. But they also like the school system. They always bring up the school system. Good school. That's why people move here. That's why they pay a lot of money. So I'm hopeful that you'll pass it tonight, and you'll vote for it next week. My taxes are going to go up. My kids aren't in the school now. But they got a good education, and the kids that are coming into the school now and in the future deserve a good education and a good facility. Thank you.
All right. Folks, I know that, you know, once we started to close off the questioning, people will start having questions that they thought of. We're going to do three. Three questions. You, there was someone over here, you, and one to be named later.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm curious with the comment about declining census, whether you were able to factor in the potential proposal for Rams Head 40B affordable housing, as far as what numbers that might add to the student numbers.
At the time that that population study was done, Rams Head didn't exist. So there are always going to be projects that will come up that you can't anticipate for. And when you go through this MSBA process, you go with that enrollment, and you have to live with that enrollment. So then the job then, or the task for the people like myself and our designers, and we do have some of those folks here tonight. I'm pointing, Jason was standing here. There he is. So it's to build capacity into the building, right? You can't build it too large, because as Ann pointed out, there's a number, and you have to stick to that number. So through things like utilization rate, how many periods a day do you plan to use a particular classroom, we know that we've got some room to grow in this building. We feel like it's the right size. It fits what the MSBA has asked us to do, but it does have room for that sort of population growth. We know that things will go up and down, right? We're a little bit on the downside. When I first joined Pentucket back in the 1998, we were in sort of a growth spike, and then things have leveled off. So this 26% has been a drop over about 10 years. So again, we feel like it's the right size, but it does have some room to grow.
All right, second.
First, I'd like to say that I am for the high school. I think that our raising the property value that's going to be raised from the taxes that are going to be going up, it totally makes sense to go for the high school. But one thing that wasn't covered is the cost distribution amongst the three towns. I'd like to know, how is one town going to be paying more? Mr. Seymour's slideshow showed the median home value varied about 15 to 20% per town, and the yearly cost didn't correlate to that. So is one town going to be paying more, or is it fairly just
Well, I could steal your thunder, but I'll let you answer that one.
Well,
As to how
so
it's broken up.
there are multiple things that go into that. One of them is the number of students from the town that go to the school. So the more students, the more you pay. So for instance, West Newbury has the smallest number of students. Merrimac and Groveland are similar with more students. So that impacts how much the town will pay.
The same type of formula is used in our annual operating assessment, that we pay. The number of students seems to be the most important factor, not the total assessed value of housing in your town. I mean, the richer town doesn't pay because they're richer. It starts with how many students that you have. They count that up and divide it, but there are other factors that are weighed into it also. But, all right. One more, way in the back, the guy with the white paper. And a
Hi.
mic.
I had a question about whether the project is fixed price, and if not, what's our overage risk? You mentioned something about the site work was one area. So can you comment on that, please?
So thanks for the question, Jay. Bob, is it okay if I ask John Lemieux, our owner's project manager, to address that question?
Sure, if you can get him to the mic.
So in the corner here in the doorway, this is John Lemieux. He works for
There it
Vertex, and again, as I explained, we have an owner's project manager. He is the representative from them. So go ahead, John.
Good evening.
I don't know if you heard the question.
Yes, John Lemieux from Vertex will be your owner's project manager for the next 3 or 4 years. The basis of this project is going to be delivered by construction manager at risk. So we've already chosen that CM. That CM, the person who's going to be building the school, actually helped put the budget together. As far as the process, as the design gets finished, they continue to put their number together, and we end up at what's called the guaranteed maximum price. They will lock in their price probably about 8 or 9 months from now. Within that total project budget you see of $146 million, there are $6 to $7 million worth of contingency. That's money that isn't spoken for yet. So that's our rainy day fund for any overruns, for any unexpected conditions when we dig in the ground. So the short answer to the question is yes, it will be a fixed price, but we work with them. That's part of this delivery method. It's open book. They give us 3 quotes for everything, 3 electricians, 3 plumbers, 3 HVAC. So we get to know that the district is getting the best deal.
Thanks, John.
All right, and then for those of you who are extra sensitive, we're only approving $146 million. It doesn't mean that that's going to be the final bill. If it's less, then we don't have to spend the money, obviously. If it's more, we have to go through this and approve spending more. So people are very careful to make sure that doesn't happen. But that is the ultimate contingency, is we will have to come back at some point and make an adjustment to how much we're authorized to spend. Yeah. All right, there are two things. So I'm going to bring this to a vote. If I see a show of hands that we are willing to cut off the debate. All in favor of cutting off the debate? All opposed? All right, the debate is over. 2 preliminary things. One, once the vote is announced, some people are going to be very happy and some people are not. But please, I don't mind if you shout and joy and jump or cry. Do not hit people. Do not run out of the room. Walk if you're going to leave town meeting after the end of this vote. Out the exit doors. The police are here. Eric Shears, the police chief, spent a great deal of time coming up with a plan of how to get this many cars here. There's not just people, but a lot of people drove. And he's going to tell you a little bit about the exit plan for those of you who drove up here.
Can we just confirm that it's once we're voting, we're done, so people can't leave? Can I ask that? Sure. Sorry, just one question. Can we confirm that once we vote, the article is completed and people can leave?
The question is this. There are 2 ways to challenge what we do in a few minutes. One is to say, hey, I don't think you counted the vote right. Please, and that's, challenging the vote itself. And that has to be done immediately, not 5 minutes later, not 10 minutes later. Some people, anybody who's here can challenge the vote. the statute says we'll do it if there's 6 people who object. I don't expect that to be the issue. It's not really what a guy is talking about. Some people think that you can bring things up for reconsideration. The reconsideration has all sorts of different rules. Merrimac Town Meeting runs by approval of town meeting about 25 years ago by Robert's rules and the town meeting time. Town meeting time and Robert's rules don't agree on what to do about consideration, reconsideration, about whether it has to be done tonight, whether it has to be done before the town meeting is adjourned, the special town meeting. And that's one of the reasons this was put on for a special, because we might be able to finish that business earlier. But it has been the practice in Merrimac that once we have had a chance to discuss, and this is why I don't cut off debate at the first instance, but I ask and ask and ask if anyone has a question. We go by reconsideration that if you bring it up now and say, hey, I mean now, I mean tonight, and you say, hey, we didn't consider something very important, and if a majority of the people here think that it's so important that we should reopen the vote, we will do that. I have to make that decision as to whether it's that important. And in all my years as moderator, it's very, very rare that it even gets suggested, like it's being suggested tonight. I can't tell people what to do. I have no idea how people are going to vote. I have a guess, but that's just where we're going. So, that's all I can tell you about, there is a thing called reconsideration. It just doesn't happen. All right, hold on.
All right, if I could just have 1 minute. I've got a bunch of great officers outside that are going to hope for an orderly exit if you choose to leave. The roads will be open. You can go left or right coming out of the parking lot, but I will tell you that if you are parked on Handsome Drive, we're only going to let you go north, so heading up Highland Road, and then you're going to be able to get onto Winter Street, which is only going to be allowed to go south. We've just got 900 or so people here and a bunch of cars. So that's all I wanted to say, and they're going to direct you appropriately. So just leave quietly, be careful, and good luck. Thank you.
All right. All right, the second thing is, there are people here that I asked when we had seats and markers to do the counting. I am going to ask for a show of hands when we vote, and if it's clear enough the way the majority is, we're not going to have them individually counted. So, they will be counted the way that we count all of our articles. I look out and I make a determination of how many people voted one way and how many people voted another way, and I call the question. If anyone has an objection to the result as declared, you make it immediately when I recognize you for that purpose. Everyone understand? All right. The motion is to approve the Pentucket School District's decision to build this new school building, $146 million, 52 million from the state, 93 million from towns, and to do that by borrowing on a debt exclusion. All in favor of that? Okay, all opposed to that? Oh, I can count that myself. The motion is approved. The motion is approved. 780 to 10. 780 to 10. Do I have any objections? All right. If so, record the vote. All right, we'll take 2 minutes. If some people don't want to stay for the rest of the next article we're going to take up is the marijuana question. All right. All right, everybody. I wish I could say take your seats, but we need them. All right, those of you who are right down here in front, I'd appreciate it if you kind of spread into the back half of the room has really gotten a lot more open, and it would be a little better if you could wander yourselves down around the corners and the edges. All right. Now, procedurally, you know, we took the school committee question up out of order from the special town meeting. And I thought because a lot of people came out to talk about the marijuana retailing article, that we should take that up next. To do so, we need to do a couple things. One, all in favor of taking a recess in the special town meeting? Please raise your hands. We take a recess of the special town meeting, so we can go to the other article. It's just, we're changing from AM to PM. All in favor of recessing the special town meeting so we can take up other business? All opposed? All right. I move then to open the annual town meeting that's been posted for April 29th. And in that annual town meeting, I suggest that we take up first Article 19. Article 19 is a proposal to allow marijuana retailing in Merrimac. All in favor of taking up Article 19? All opposed? All right, we are allowed to take up 19.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the zoning bylaw as follows. Remove Article 3.11, the operation of all types of non-medical marijuana establishments as defined in General Law, Section 94G, subsection 1, including marijuana cultivators, independent testing laboratory, marijuana product manufacturers, marijuana retailers, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related business within the town of Merrimac, and add Article 11.4.5, adult use retail marijuana establishments, and add a new article, adult use retail marijuana establishments, as written above.
It's been seconded? All right. It's been moved and seconded that we make an amendment to our zoning bylaws. And do we have the approval of the town meeting to waive the reading of the 5 pages of that bylaw? All in favor of waiving the reading? All opposed? All right, we'll proceed without waiving it. I'll just give you a couple of the highlights. One, the part that was read, as you know, two years ago at the elections, the statewide elections, the town of Merrimac voted to prohibit all types of marijuana establishments in the town of Merrimac. This was a couple of years after the statewide vote, where Merrimac had voted, like many towns, in favor of allowing marijuana someplace in Massachusetts, but it didn't make a vote about what to do in Merrimac itself. So 2 years ago, there was a town poll vote, and at that vote, the town approved changing the bylaws of town to prohibit any kind of marijuana establishments, the whole range of things that have just been listed. This is a bylaw change to the zoning that would, it appears, maintain a prohibition about all the other types of uses except for medical marijuana, which we had not banned, and retail. This would now allow retail marijuana establishments up to one being 20% or less, yeah, of the liquor licenses, places where you can actually go into an establishment and drink in Merrimac. So that works out to 1. So this is basically the thing is can we change the bylaws of Merrimac to allow a marijuana retailing? And according to the details in this, a marijuana retailing will be limited to one place in Merrimac, that is, what's the name of that zone? Town Office light industrial. I knew there was someone from the planning board here who has been telling me this every night for the last month. All right, office industrial. What is office industrial? That's the place that we put things that we don't want in residential or in school or in all sorts of other districts, but we have one that's called office industrial. Huh? Light industrial. We don't have any heavy industrial here. And physically where that is, south of East Main Street, you know, there's a few businesses there between the post office and what's called North Street. It's opposite of Bear Hill Road. Along that corridor, all the way down past 495 is an area roughly that's called this light industrial area. And I think some of it tucks around almost out to Broad Street. There's a new building going up at Broad Street, kitty corner from Dunkin' Donuts, you know, in Mill Street. That, I think that piece of land is in that zone, that particular corner. So that's the question here. I don't know if there's anybody here who watched the candidates night or follows the planning board, but the routine of things is if people have a proposal for a change in zoning, they go to the planning board and let it be heard by the planning board and see if the planning board supports it, but also see what technical problems there might be if people aren't professional, and even the people on planning board aren't the professionals. They hire somebody to look at things and see if there are any problems or bugs in what the proposal is. It's not so much they don't like the proposal necessarily, it's does the language actually do what the people want it to do? Unfortunately, I understand that that didn't happen in this instance. We haven't had any public debate, as far as I know, about what this actually is doing until tonight. So we've moved and opened this. I'd ask if there is someone here who represents the 8 people who want this to happen. You want to come forward and tell people what it is. I've tried not to take a side one way or the other, but just to sort of put out basically what it is that's being talked about. Does anyone want to speak in support of this motion? Let's not do what we did with the school, where we go through this 6 times and then people start raising their hands. Does anyone want to speak to this? Does anyone have a question about it? Mr. Baumgartner? I don't, at this point, I'm opening the floor to anyone who has something that they want to say about this article. I just gave the first question to, okay, well, hang on, because I think someone else is coming up to the mic. Mr. Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to point out and sort of reiterate what the moderator said, that this town took a vote 2 years ago, and the vote had a turnout of over 1,400 people. That's extraordinary for a town-only vote. It's about 3 times more than normally the normal turnout for a town-only vote. 763 people of those 1,400 voted to prohibit marijuana recreational sales in this town. We codified that in October of 2017 with a zoning bylaw change to support the vote and the will of the people. We're now being asked, by just changing the zoning bylaw, to allow recreational marijuana in Merrimac. And I think that's unfair. I think that disenfranchises the vote of the 763 people that came out to prohibit it. I think that it's somewhat in advance of the legislature. And let me tell you what I mean by that. When the state legislature passed the law allowing towns to prohibit or to allow or to put a moratorium on recreational marijuana, they did so with the assumption that a town had not made any decision at that point. Merrimac was a bit ahead of the game, and we did vote to prohibit. Unfortunately, the state statute doesn't allow for that or doesn't consider that. So the way that the statute is written, if a town wants to prohibit, they have to have a vote of the people, or a vote of the voters, as the legislation says. That's been interpreted by town council to mean that we have to go to the polls and vote. However, if a town wants to allow, they can do that simply by changing the zoning bylaw and determine where in their town or city they want this to happen. I would suggest that the legislature needs to catch up with where some of the communities in Merrimac are. I would suggest that the proponents of this step forward and explain why they want this change. And I would ask that we consider that if we do this tonight, what that means for the future. Now, all of you folks that are in here, most of you, I think with the exception of a couple, raised your hands in favor of the school. How would you feel if 2 years from now, somebody proposes a zoning bylaw change to not allow that school to be built? Your vote would be invalidated. So I ask you to consider that. And Mr. Moderator, given the fact that there's no one from the proponent side to explain their situation and why they've asked for this, and the legislature needs to catch up with what we've done in Merrimac, I move to table this motion.
All right. Let me just hang on before I catch people. We have a special motion, which is a motion to table. A motion to table in Merrimac means not to take a vote, other than we agree not to take a vote, and we'll vote on that. If we agree to table this, that means in Merrimac it will not be considered in this year's warrant. It is done for this year. If it can be brought up again in some other town meeting, people can petition for a special town meeting. However it is, but if it's tabled, it is over for now. The alternative to tabling things is to go ahead and vote on it up or down. When you vote up and down, if you want it, you vote yes. If you don't want it, you vote no. If it fails, I don't think it can come back for 2 years. Is that, no? Anyway, if you don't want it, you can vote to table, or you can say, well, I want to stay here and see if we vote no. But a vote to table, it takes 2/3 to table something because we won't take it up again. And so I'll put that. We have to take that vote before we can have any further debate. Yes, ma'am. It cannot be brought up again during this town meeting. And that would be the end of it until there's a new petition and a new request to put it up for a new town meeting. All right. We're just going on the procedure. I don't want to get into the merits of what it is. You have a question about tabling?
Oh, tabling?
Tabling? I guess the answer is no, you don't. Okay. All in favor of tabling this question, please raise your hand. All against tabling? Well, that's far more than the 1/3 needed. So we will continue this discussion. Yes, ma'am.
I have a concern, a major concern. Obviously, the state has no formalized rule and regulation with respect to degrading the vote that took place and eliminating its value. Until the state comes up with something of substance and a formal ruling, I think it's foolish for us to vote for it when we really don't know what we're voting for and the parameters that are set by the state, which are non-existent at the moment. Okay? So let me caution everybody. No, I'm talking about the parameters of what it covers. What it covers as far as the rules and regulations and limitations.
Speak to me.
Sorry.
All right. And other people, you don't ask questions to the speaker. You
Okay.
ask to speak to the meeting. Okay?
Okay. So I caution everybody, do not devalue the right that you have to vote to be diminished in its capacity. The vote was against medical marijuana by the, I'm sorry, not medical, recreational marijuana 2 years ago by a larger majority of individuals. You are going to discount their vote if you go ahead and approve this. Sorry. Oh, this way.
All right. Yes, sir. Well, if you see the green light, then it's on.
Hello.
There you go.
My name's Chris. I'm the one that submitted the petition for recreational marijuana. I'm not the best speaker at all, and I don't have the most information in the world, but I will say that this petition was submitted because of the voters, because we have the right to vote. And no matter what happened 2 years ago, the system has changed, and we're here again asking for this change.
Let me at least try to clear one thing up. Maybe you know the answer to this. I've looked at, when they say the system has changed to what's going on in the legislature has put together a whole set of rules about marijuana other than medical marijuana, and it's in a part of the statute called 94G. And in there, they have the same rules that they've had for before about what types of things the towns can allow or ban. But what they've changed in the last few years is how the town goes about doing that. Is that what you understand?
Yes, sir. The most of the companies are also, they have an idea, all the towns are doing this now, they have an idea of how this structure is supposed to be put together, organized, and so on. So there's a much better infrastructure now of what we should do in order to get this underway and working properly for the town in benefit of.
Okay, but I'm not talking about how to run a retail business.
Yes,
I'm talking about how does a town approve whether or not it's going to allow marijuana retailing. That's what the state has been in flux with and how they changed it. 2 years ago when Merrimac voted, a vote at the town polls was what the state law said. You do that, up or down, it's done. Now, we have people coming forward and saying, we think that the law says now, if the town meeting approves it like they approve any other zoning, that's all the kind of vote that's needed. That's a little bit of what this debate is for procedure. For whether you want a marijuana retail or not, that's what I suggest people talk about. Because if the majority of people are opposed, it fails. If the majority of people are in favor, it passes if we did it right. If we follow there. It's 2/3 because it's a zoning bylaw change. 2/3 have to say yes for it to be a yes. 1/3 is the other. But I just wanted to see if we're on the same page as far as what's going on here.
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll go around, and I see people are going to be going, so we'll go through the squad. In the back, yes, ma'am. Well, can you sort of come down the aisle a little bit? There's a mic in the aisle.
Hi, my
Hi.
name is Genevieve. I just wanted to say that I don't know how many people know this, but within, I'd say 5 miles from Merrimac on both sides of 110, there will be recreational marijuana shops, and why not bring that revenue to Merrimac, especially when we're trying to build a new school and get some commercial tax revenue that benefits our town as well.
All right. Coming through here down the middle. Well, we'll be getting you. I can only look at 1/4 at a time. In the back with the black. Sure. Yep. Well, come.
Hi, my name's Ashley Tracy, 37 Orchard Street. One thing I think everybody needs to consider, the places that currently have, and I just know this because of my own role in my employment, but the places that currently have these, the ability to dispense, most of these places are going into office parks that have, Merrimac is a really small town. We do not have the infrastructure. We're one road in, one road out. So I want you to consider, people are concerned about how much traffic's coming in and the people coming in from Ram's Head. I want you to consider, are you prepared for the number of cars that are coming in and out on 110? Because again, we don't even have a stoplight in this town, and we're gonna open ourselves up. I understand that the idea of the money coming in seems like a great idea, but one thing other people also have to consider is there is zero oversight once those licenses are given. And so there is no oversight within the towns, and there's no oversight given after the license is given about what these dispensaries are and the deals they're making to try to get into the towns. So I know everyone thinks, and I certainly support, wanting to get more money into this town, but before we make this vote, which I don't think most people who came to town meeting even knew was on the ballot or even being considered tonight, no, really, because I don't think that people did, is I would ask that you just consider what you're asking in terms of the infrastructure of this town. We can't even get new roads built. So.
I want to point out something that wasn't mentioned. It's in the details of the article that wasn't read. In Massachusetts, the state has established something called the Cannabis Control Commission, CCC. It's a sort of on the same theory that they have one for alcoholic beverages, which is ABCC. This state organization, you have to get a license from that organization if you want to operate a marijuana establishment in Massachusetts legally. And to get that license, you have to go through all of its regulations and checkouts and how you're handling money and who works there and where you're located and so forth. And do you have the proper arrangement and authority with the local community? Have they approved it and so forth and so on? And getting the license, it's not like getting the driver's license. You have to make reports about your business and all sorts of things, where your money's coming from, how it's being used, where you're getting your drugs. You have to be open to inspections of your store. All of these are done by the CCC's agents. Now, it's true we haven't seen that happen for a long time because they haven't actually been stores for a long time. But it's not correct to say that there is no regulation. Well, no, but they exist. That's what they're supposed to be doing, okay? I'm not vouching for CCC, but to say that there is nothing isn't, I mean, you have to admit there is a CCC, and its job is to do these regulations. If you don't think it's doing its job, that's fine. I'm not telling you differently. I'm just telling you that it exists, and I'm trying to at least get us to decide this on as close to understanding what actually is going on as it is. If you are for this, that's fine. If you're not for it, that's fine too. We're going to have a vote on that in town. And as I said before, all the different contingencies, if you don't want it, just say no. If you do want it, say yes. And the yes people don't get it just because they say yes. They have to satisfy all the requirements that the state says are there, not the requirements we in this room think are there. All right? Yes.
Is it on? Okay. I'm really just reiterating what people have already said at this point, but I do understand that the way the voting works, if it was turned down initially, it's not the same process for if somebody wants to bring it up again. But in my opinion, this is no longer about whether you want it or don't want it. I think the process is just not fair since we all came out to a ballot election previously, and I think that no matter which side you're on, you should care about this.
Sure.
Yep.
You should be good now.
Good? Okay. I just have a question. I know that a company called Alternative Therapies Group had put quite an investment in trying to bring a retail establishment to our community, and that our vote and our zoning law change had caused them to leave. If we then vote tonight to approve the zoning change, can ATG come back to us and sue? And have we, has the town gotten any legal advice about that?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I play one at town meeting. If you're asking, can we get sued? Well, maybe the question is there a basis to get sued? You can get sued by people who don't know whether they have a right to sue you. All right.
Right.
But if you're saying, like, do they have the leg to stand on?
Yeah, I mean,
that business has operated, they opened the one in Salem, Mass. That's, you know, they got a lot of attention. It's one of the very first ones that opened. They have one up, I think, for approval in Methuen or in Haverhill. I don't know where they've gone with it. But there's a limit to how many they can have. We didn't throw them out. They decided not to proceed with a medical marijuana place because they didn't think that they could do it if retail marijuana was not allowed to. And they made a decision of which of the different communities they were looking at that they wanted to go to. Now, if that makes them think they can sue us, I guess that's what lawyers are for. I can't predict that, but and I don't think that that's the situation that we're in.
Okay, thank you.
No, we have a couple of people that wanted to, and we'll close it off once we're done going around.
I have a couple of quick questions because this whole discussion is new. I mean, I knew it was coming to the vote, but there's mention in the article in section C of a permit, special permit, and there's no cost, but I mean, there's no cost, clear cost mentioned there, so I'm wondering, will the permit cost cover any costs incurred by the town regarding administration or regulation or enforcement or anything like that? I'd kind of like to hear from the law enforcement what the concerns they have there. Then I have two more parts to ask after that.
All right, we'll go with that. You didn't mention, and maybe you can add it in the question, there's this thing about getting an agreement with the town, and that covers a lot of what you're talking about. People have a permission to let our town attorney from Copeland and Page speak?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, just very briefly,
Yeah.
as you say, if the town regulates this kind of business by zoning, it's sort of the normal one compared to other businesses, but the statute requires that the proposed business negotiate a host community agreement with the town. They can't even apply for their license until they have that, and that's typically where you would see an agreement where the business would chip in a percentage. It can't be over 3% of the gross revenues, but that's the purpose of that, to cover some of the costs that the town anticipates increasing.
And within the parameters of the state law, that's what allows the town to collect money from the business.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, sir.
So then the 3% you keep mentioning, I just read ahead, that's Article 20. Is that a separate article then for the 3%?
Well, we have to adopt, that article is, we have to adopt a state law provision that gives us authority to collect taxes on marijuana business.
So that's separate and aside from the special permit
That is
that's
separate
mentioned in C.
That is separate and aside from the special
So
permit.
two potential revenue that could help offset. My concern is what the law enforcement in the town foresees as issues and costs and just overall concerns, what they would foresee as this. And my last third part is this on the ballot or is this just the one vote here, not on the ballot?
Well, I can answer the third because it's going to get back to what I was saying before. Right now, there's a question in the way that the Chapter 94G, which sets up the state law on how to deal with these businesses. 2 years ago, they said that in order to prohibit marijuana, you have to have a town-wide poll, not town meeting, but you had to have a vote, and that was to prohibit it. The law was changed, and now it says that if you were a yes community, way back when 4 years ago, when we had that election, and 2/3 or 60% of the towns voted yes in favor of somewhere there can be marijuana, and 1/3 of the towns voted no, we don't think there should be marijuana. They made two procedures. If you're a yes town, then you have to get a vote to prohibit. And this, what's going on right now, they're saying, is not a vote to prohibit, it's a vote to allow. So they think you don't need to follow that procedure. What the lawyers say about that, I'm not so sure, because they've given different You know, they've given, like, we're not really sure where things are going.
So there's no partner vote on the ballot for this particular
There is no ballot
thing.
vote set up for this right now because
Okay.
there were people who felt that that was not required. And as I said, the yes people, if you get a yes here and they're not, and it turns out they're not right about the ballot, then what we do tonight will not count to allow the marijuana. If we vote no, we don't need to go to the ballot to vote no. So you know, it's a little clearer where things will happen if you vote no. It's not 100% clear that marijuana will be allowed if you vote yes, but there's, you can't say no, that's not right either. It may well be allowed if we vote yes. Chief, did you want to add anything to the conversation?
Nothing like being put on the spot here. I have a cell phone in case somebody's looking for that. I have that here in case you lost it. That's what I was trying to deal with over there, so I didn't hear the entire question, other than you want an opinion, a law enforcement opinion. So marijuana, recreational marijuana passed in Massachusetts. Whether or not our community votes to have recreational pot shops or not have recreational pot shops, my staff are dealing with marijuana in this community every single day. From our perspective, it's here. You guys need to vote and decide whether you want the sales to happen in Merrimac. What, the impact, so there's a lot of question about regulation. The CCC has a tremendous amount of regulations. They make these pharmacies or medical marijuana dispensaries track from seed to throwing something out. The entire growth is tracked. It's very highly regulated. I'm working with the medical marijuana dispensary now on their program. They have to come to the town. They have to meet with me, the fire chief, to go over their security plans and how they're going to operate. And the CCC, I mean, I'll tell you just because I know this from my wife, who runs big pharmacies. There's more regulation in marijuana than there is for opiates in the Commonwealth right now. So it's here.
Excuse me, we have the honor.
Oh, you got it? Perfect. Thank you. We found the phone. That's a good thing. So whether or not you choose to have a recreational marijuana shop in Merrimac, we are dealing with it every single day. So.
All right, what the chief said sort of reminded me of one thing to remind you of. That is that this vote, yes or no, is only about whether or not there can be a retail shop in Merrimac selling marijuana. It does not affect your personal rights to possess and use marijuana, whether you buy it in Merrimac legally or you buy it legally someplace else. If you buy it from somebody who doesn't have a license, see the chief. Mr. Baumgart. Yeah, the question is does the planning board have a comment about this? The planning board did have this before them. Ms. Venner?
Yes, Sandy Venner, I chair the planning board, and yes, we held the mandatory public hearing on this as a zoning change. We were very disappointed that there weren't any proponents of the change with supporting the article to come at the public hearing, because we had a number of questions and areas of confusion about what was being proposed, but because a citizen's petition warrant article has to go on just exactly as it's submitted to the town clerk, the only people who could have modified that in any way to take care of some of the ambivalence and the ways that it just doesn't fit into our zoning the way it is written, we weren't able to address with them because no one came to speak to us. The board did vote against it, 5-0 against supporting it. I can't tell you, to be honest, if it was because we knew that there was some zoning irregularities with the language that we were unable to address, or if it was the argument that you heard tonight here that it seemed to, for the town to decide not to have recreational marijuana to be both a ballot question and a question of zoning, and voted here at town meeting for the zoning change, and this is only a zoning change, doesn't have the ballot question. I really can't tell you why the board, all members on the board, voted in opposition to this change.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
I guess this question goes to Chief Cheers. You said that marijuana is already here in the town. Why wouldn't we want the sales here? Doesn't that increase your risk of having sales in our town? Do you need more police force? Do you anticipate that?
So do I need more police force? Yes. We're about 2 guys short, so, you know, what do you want me to tell you? I mean, recreational marijuana, there's a 3% tax that's available to the town. And I don't know what the sales would be. I've heard a bunch of different numbers, but there's a substantial amount of money if we allow this to happen, which could offset some of these big projects like schools, police stations, DPWs, fire departments, that kind of stuff. The one concern that I truly have is that the black market of marijuana exists, and it exists in Merrimac. People are selling marijuana in Merrimac, believe it or not. They're growing marijuana in Merrimac. We've had a couple cases that way. The problem with that is it offsets what the people that are the legal sellers and growers of marijuana are trying to do, because they circumvent the tax laws. So my concern right now is with illegal black market marijuana. Recreational marijuana in the state is so highly regulated that it is what it is. It's here. You know, that's all I got to say, honestly.
Yep. Yeah, go to the aisle if you.
Mr. Moderator, this is somewhat of a process question. Is there anything that prohibits a petitioner from taking a question of this nature to the ballot so that we can maintain the integrity of the initial voting and see if in fact the town has an appetite to turn this over at the ballot box rather than through a procedural issue such as this?
All right. I wish I could tell you. Okay, I wish I could tell you. I don't know. We'll go to the big money. I don't get paid to be your lawyer, but this guy does. So.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, basically the only way you can have a binding ballot question is if there's a law or a special act that provides for it. The Chapter 94G with the adult use marijuana provides that if you want to ban it, which you folks did 2 years ago. There is no process in that law that would provide for a binding ballot question on this article that's here tonight.
Well, good. Now we can have a lawyer-to-lawyer debate. I was waiting for somebody to fall into my trap. Thank you. What the attorney is saying is perfectly right. What we can do in Merrimac or in any locality to regulate marijuana establishments, and in this case, the only marijuana establishment we're talking about is retail sales. What we can do as a town is defined by the state. That's where we keep coming up with the state statute called Chapter 94G. The entire chapter, about 8 or 10 pages, deals with marijuana, and a page and a half of it deals with how to approve or disapprove it and what's going on. And one of the problems is, as I said, the legislature came up with trying to solve a problem between communities that had voted yes in the statewide vote, or communities that voted no. Communities that voted yes, originally the position was you had to take a poll question to vote it out. Now you're asking, can we do it voluntarily, make an amendment to a bylaw that says this bylaw is approved subject to an approval at the polls, like we do with debt exclusion. There is nothing in the state statute that says we can make them jump through that hoop. All right, so the question is, would they do it voluntarily? Well, I don't know. We can't make them do it. This is why I said before, if you want retail sales, you have to vote yes. If you do not want them, you have to vote no. Because we're not going to have an answer tonight or in 100 nights about what this poll question is that people are bothered by. People who vote yes are going to have to face that question down the road. If somebody says it's different than what they thought it was going to be, they're going to have to make that adjustment. They're going to have to come back to town. But that's dependent on somebody saying that that's what you wanted, a poll vote, is something you can require. That's not what the law is right now. So it's an interesting debate, but we don't have control over what the state law is. The state has control over what the state law is. Yes, sir.
Hi, Ron Beauregard. I came in here with an open mind. I hadn't reviewed the proposal warrant. But it seems to me all the discussion that I've heard, it kind of loses sight of what the debate should be about. This isn't about whether marijuana should be legalized, whether it will be used. These have all been settled. The state is the state law, and I know, moderator, you have mentioned this. I think what the key is it the correct venue? And actually, those who have been in favor of this article have actually persuaded me more to vote against it. The fact that there are accessible marijuana establishments within a stone's throw of Merrimac, that to me is an incentive not to vote for it. Another part that has convinced me is the money. I'm always afraid. We have a lot of folks that left, and they were committed to the school's improvement, including myself. And they did that independent of whether or not there was going to be a place to buy marijuana. So these are things that are most important to me. And I think finally what I want to say is that no one here is impugning the right of anyone to smoke marijuana, to use it. And I think a lot of people who voted during that ballot question, even whether they voted yes or no, were conflicted, because they didn't like the idea of people going to jail or being fined or being criminalized for using marijuana. But we have to look at our town here, and I don't want this to be a NIMBY issue, and I know we can be accused of that. But the facts are Merrimac is a very small town, both geographically and in population, and we do not have an industrial, I think it's called light industrial manufacturing, that is truly separate and distinct from both our center of town and our residents. I encourage you to vote no.
All right, two more. Yes, sir.
Hi. I want to follow up saying I agree completely, I forget his name, with what he said about it's important about the venue, except my take on it's the exact opposite. As Chief Shears has said, it's here regardless. And the problem is, if we say no, it's the same as every system has said no in history, and that has proven to make the problem worse. Prohibition is exactly an example of that. In a big state, there's more control on something when it's in the open and controlled by state, government, and regulated. The black market ends up being minimized, it ends up being pushed aside, and it ends up being controlled. I think Chief Shears makes a point that it's here regardless, and we're either going to fight it under, or we're going to fight it in the open, which means that we know what we have, we know it's in our backyard, we know how we can regulate it. I just know when we say no to things in history, look back through all the things that we try to say no to and how it's turned out. My point is, I think we need to consider the fact that, yes, it does matter about the venue. Merrimac is a small town. I have kids here. I care very much about that. I also want the law enforcement to have the ability to have the monies coming in to help them enforce this. I want them to also have the upper hand on the people who are running it, and that the people who are doing black market don't have power anymore. That's my opinion.
Okay. Sir?
Hi, Matt Schweisberg, High Street. Just to correct, this is not about prohibiting marijuana. It never has been, it never will be. That's a settled question. This is about whether the town of Merrimac has the infrastructure and all of the support for a store that sells retail marijuana. And it's very clear that we don't. And until we do, we should not have a retail store for marijuana. In, what was the question? There were 5 miles in either direction. There are places to buy it. They have the infrastructure, and they've thought about that. We don't have that kind of infrastructure here. We can deal with the traffic and safety issues and so forth. So keep that in mind. It's not about whether it's prohibited or allowed. It's about whether this is the right place for a retail store.
Hi, my name is Christy. I just moved here a couple months ago. And just to the points about the location, by a show of hands here, how many people here have been to a dispensary in California or Vegas or anything like that?
Okay, well, it's a debating question.
Okay. My point is this. I've been to dispensaries in Las Vegas, in California, and these are run like doctor's offices. You have to have an appointment to get in. You have to show your ID. I think you guys are fearful that there's gonna be this traffic and this chaos. It's really not, hold on,
Okay,
I'm speaking,
folks.
It's really not like that. It's honestly run like a very professional doctor's office where you have to have an appointment, you need to show your ID.
Wait, folks.
Little respect here, gentlemen. I'm just letting you know that what you're fearing is probably a made-up story, and if you do a little bit of research about what actually happens in a dispensary, how they are run, you might find that it's really not going to be this huge disruption, but actually bring business, dollars, and tax revenue into this town. Thank you.
All right, that's the three. Is anyone gonna die if they can't say something? Okay. All right. I'll catch you. Some of you may have babysitters here, are using the babysitting service here. They wanted to end it at 9:30. It's 1:15. Let us take a vote, and the babysitters will be patient. We'll be out after the vote. That's it. Up or down, yes or no. All right. Please. I'm not sure if we're going to end up having the count, but we're going to do the same way it did with the school. The first vote will be by show of hands. The first question is, are you in favor of the zoning change? In favor of allowing the marijuana sales? That side requires twice as many votes as the other, 2 out of 3 in order to pass. All in favor of allowing the retailing of marijuana, please show your hand. Okay, I can see we're going to have a count, but I can see right now it's going to be too close to call it by just seeing it. So, folks, put your hands down. All right, can I see the hands up of the people who agreed to be counters tonight? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. All right, counters, I'm going to have to reassign things a little bit just so we can get this count. We have 4 sections in the room. Each one is divided by an aisle. So from this aisle to the green wall, between the 2 aisles, from that aisle to the green wall. Those of you who are standing in the back, please do not stand in an aisle or you will not be counted. Separate so that you're on one side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle. All right. Now who are the counters? You're counting this? You're counting this? Who's my counter in the back? Yeah. Sir, we need someone to count this side.
Can I suggest something?
Why don't you have all the people that are for it move to one side of the room and all the people that are against it move to the other?
This is a, believe me, yeah. People are going to get stuck. All right, please separate here. You got to be in one aisle or the other. You can't stand in the middle. Are you going to count? Are you two counting? Okay, you count this side, you count that side. All the way to the wall. All the way to the outside wall. Ma'am, you in the yellow, you got to get one side or the other. And those in that door, one side or the other. Those people outside, you got to come in the room to vote. All right. All of you who are in favor of allowing the marijuana retailing in Merrimac, please raise your hand.
We're going to count now?
Yes.
Okay. $19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68.
Just between the two aisles.
Yes.
Great job.
Okay. 68. Okay, who is counting this middle section? 47? 47? 47. All right.
No, you got to make them put their hands on the same way he did it.
Bob? Where have I heard that? All right, and our big section, 55? 65. Okay, one out the front. Everybody voted that wanted to vote, yes? All right. All opposed? Excuse me. Because they all checked in.
We were checked in.
Ma'am, we have to conclude the vote. All who are opposed to marijuana retailing in Merrimac, please raise your hands. Now you can see why we have it to count.
I'm filing the divorce paperwork when we get home. You filing it?
Don't divorce me over this, all right? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. I'm going to give you two now. I'm just going to drop it off in the middle of the night. You're all set. Right.
Huh? 77? Five? 5-4. Arthur?
Moderator, 43, no.
43. 37?
Well, it hasn't passed by 2/3 to pass, it's 2/3, so I don't think so. It's like half-half right now.
All right. Have we done a count of the room? The yes is 228. The no is 213. The motion fails. All right. Those of you who have someone to pick up from childcare, from babysitting, please allow them to go. All right, it's 5 minutes to 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is the witching hour for town meeting. We cannot take up any new business after 10 o'clock. Is there a motion that we recess? Is there a motion that we recess the annual town meeting as well as the special town meeting? We will continue in 2 weeks. All in favor of recess? All right, we stand in recess for 2 weeks. Remember to vote 1 week from tonight, well, 1 week from this morning. Here is, if you still want a cell phone, see the chief. We have another cell phone up here in the silent auction.
There's some things to talk about. So, can I confirm